Good morning, Lighthouse. It is a beautiful Thursday morning, and here I am again with Katie, and we are in our post-Wednesday, Thursday morning vlog reflecting on last night. And it seemed like there was a theme building from Jack's message and then into our small groups about walking humbly with God and what humility is and how do you live in the humility that God has for us. And I'm reminded of an experience I had years ago in my very first trip to Hawaii. I was surfing in this location, and I actually found myself sitting out in the water right next to a giant mountain. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's kind of a crazy experience. So you're in the water, but just up on the beach, there's like a freeway, like a road, and then just beyond the road, it literally goes up a mountain. There's just a mountain right there. And it's a part of this mountain range that most people call the West Maui Mountains, even though it has another name that is long in Hawaiian, and I can't remember right now. But it was this amazing experience because oftentimes we see mountains from a distance, right? Like if I was to go outside right now and look at Mount Diablo in my view, I could sort of pinch it almost, right? You've probably done that before. You can make it seem small. And then if you've ever been to Mount Diablo and you get there and you realize, oh my gosh, this thing's enormous. And so I was sitting in the water surfing, just looking up at this mountain, realizing how big it truly was now that I was standing next to it. And that's always been a great illustration for me in terms of what humility actually is, because I believe the closer we get to God, the bigger we see, or the more we see how big of a deal He really is. And then that doesn't cause us pain or discomfort. It just causes us an accurate sort of reflection on how big of a deal we are in relationship to who He is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to give that to you guys. It's been something that's always been interesting to me to think that the closer I am to God, the more humble I will become as I understand how big He is and how big or small I am in relationship to Him.
Yeah. So one thing that we talked about in the girls group was a difference in definition of humility between like Merriam-Webster in the dictionary of knowing that you're awesome but just not talking about it.
Is that what it says?
But that's my paraphrase of it.
Okay, all right, wow.
Pretty much.
Wow.
That's the Katie version. And a Christian humility of understanding that you submit and obey God's authority and follow Him where He calls you, and not that it's about how good you are, but how good God is. And one of the things that I mentioned was when you are serving someone, you're willing to go more than 50% to meet them. And then a great illustration that was brought up was going a second mile. So if you've ever heard the saying, walk a mile in someone's shoes, take it further, go two, and try to really experience what they experience, but also reflect, like serve them for longer than they've expected or asked for. So yeah, I thought that was a really powerful image of humility.
That's great. I want to just say that a lot of times Christians go out into the world and it seems like we sometimes forget how big of a deal humility is. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times Christians are guilty, and I say this as one who is also guilty of struggling with arrogance and struggling with trying to be humble. A lot of times Christians are guilty of being arrogant in the world and sort of portraying arrogance rather than portraying the humility of Christ. And I just want to say two things about that really briefly. One is that Jesus was incredibly humble, and we could go into all kinds of illustrations from the scriptures, both from the Gospels, but then also from the letters, the epistles, about the testimony of the apostles to the humility of Christ. And so the example that we have for us in Christianity is one of humility, not one of arrogance. Beyond that, though, I think for me it's become a test in my own life. It's been kind of a litmus test for my own life, but also in what I see in the people that I'm working with or discipling, that if your faith is not creating in you a greater sense of humility, then it's not that you're not saved, it's not a judgment on salvation, but it is saying that there might be something off about your walk with God. In other words, you might not be walking close with God. You might not be able to see how good God really is, as Katie was talking about. And so, yeah, I just want to leave that with us, that humility is a really big deal. And for us as Christians to claim that we're walking with God, but to not do so humbly is potentially hypocritical, antithetical, at least problematic, and probably going to cause a lot of other people to stumble in their understanding of who God is as they see us act in arrogant ways. So with that, guys, we look forward to continuing this series on justice and mercy this Sunday. We want to remind you, please sign up for 30-Hour Famine. I know all of you in your brains are thinking, I'm going, but it doesn't help us when you just keep that in your brain. So please sign up, turn your money in if you owe money, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Bye.
What's the deal? Can't you read?